fentanyl, methamphetamine use, and a heart attack. And that's why America is burning. And for those of you who don't know, George Floyd had cocaine issues way back in the day. And so here we have a multi-decade drug abuser and drug addict, a violent man who, according to some reports I've seen, also starred in pornography videos, or at least a pornography video. And cocaine can weaken and damage the heart in ways that are really tough even to show up on standard medical exams. So a multi-decade drug abuser. And see, when the cops tried to get him out of the car, he wouldn't cooperate. I think they finally got him out of the car, and they said, get in the cop car, right? You're under arrest, right? You're resisting arrest and so on, right? And he wouldn't get into the car. He says, hey, man, I'm claustrophobic. Now, of course, he may have been having anxiety attacks, may have been having a panic attack, or that may be when his heart decided to hit the road to Foreverland. And this is a terrible situation. It's a terrible, terrible situation. And of course, the cops may still be responsible. Just to be clear, I don't know. This is the whole purpose that is going to be figured out. But this guy, methamphetamine, fentanyl, heart attack, come on. This idea that it was just straight up murder, cold-blooded, first-degree cop kill and murder. I mean, it's just terrible. Yeah, his death was ruled a homicide. Now, I'm not an expert on this, of course, right? So, the legal definition of homicide, right? So homicide is broader in scope than murder, right? So this is from the legal dictionary. So if we're going to get into the technical terms, let's get into them, right? So it's homicide may not be criminal, right? So the killing of one human being by another human being is ruled a homicide, but that doesn't mean that it's criminal. And of course, the typical example of something that is a homicide but not criminal is self-defense. If you kill a person who's threatening you with death or serious injury, then this is the defense for the McMichaels with regards to Ahmaud Arbery, right? That he grabbed Travis McMichael's shotgun, and therefore Travis McMichael had to use force to defend himself and so on, right? So murder is different, right? So murder is the unlawful killing of a person with malice, aforethought, or premeditated intent to kill. So every time a human being is killed by another human being, that is a homicide. And so there's not a lot of categories that you can put into a death certificate, right? I mean, there's illness, accident, old age, natural causes, whatever it is, right? There's a certain number of things that you can put in. And was it an accident? No, he didn't fall off a ladder and crack his head on the pavement, right? Was it old age or was it natural causes? Well, no. Was it a direct illness? That's, the heart attack. You say, oh, well, but he had a heart attack while he was being arrested because he was so stressed. It's like, okay, so what does that mean? You can't arrest anyone because they might have a heart attack? I mean, I don't know how that could possibly work. And he didn't say, I'm having a heart attack. He said, I can't breathe. And according to according to the medical examiner who was hired by Floyd's family, you can not be able to breathe, but still say that you're not able to breathe repeatedly. So that is, I don't know what the homicide means, that he did not die of natural causes. It was not an accident. It was not an illness. He was killed by someone. Now, I don't know the level of fentanyl that he had in his system, and I don't think that's been released as yet. But if the fentanyl was laced, then maybe it was the drug dealer who killed him, and maybe it was the cop who killed him. But it seems like a tough case to make to me. Now, you could say, of course, well, once the guy's he's in the care and custody of the cops, they're now responsible for his health and his welfare. But I mean, the guy had a bum ticker. He had heart disease. He was on fentanyl, the recent methamphetamine. I mean, he was a mess. And maybe the cop is responsible, and that's something which we'll see played out at a court of law. There's a reason why he got third degree in manslaughter and not first degree, right? So the cop was not, as far as I can see, the cop was not trying to kill him. The cop was not targeting him. There's a reason why George Floyd was on the road, like on the ground, rather than in the car, because he wouldn't get in the car. And then they have a problem. And they saw, of course, that he was experiencing medical distress. That's why they called the ambulance, which took about 10 minutes to arrive. So I'm sorry to be put on this to one side, but the fact that it's called a homicide simply means that it's not entirely natural causes. And we'll see. But this is something that you're not going to see of a lot in the mainstream media. You're not going to see that George Floyd had had heart disease, that fentanyl, which is a wickedly, wildly, incredibly dangerous, powerful drug, that he had a multi-decade history of drug abuse and all of that. It's just, right? And I just wanted to say a couple of things that really, of course, bother me about all this kind of stuff. So people who say, well, he was killed because of a $10 bill or a $20 bill. That's not true. That's not the case. That's not reality. Because that's not the causality. I mean, that's not the way that the law works. It's not the way that the cops work. You get all of this, right? He died for a variety of reasons, some of which may have had something to do with the cops. Perfectly aware of that, and I'm happy to hear those cases, and that case will be put before. But as far as I've been able to tell, and I have looked this up, believe it or not, on the Minnesota site, the police site, you're allowed to use neck restraints. You're allowed to, if you're in danger, if you're concerned. And people say, yes, well, he was on the ground and he was fading out and so on. Yeah, that absolutely should be examined by a court of law. I have no problem with that. I'd like to know more. But this was not a man in his prime who had no health issues, and he had a heart attack. From what the coroner is saying, the man had a heart attack. And cops can do some pretty mean things to you. They can beat you up. They can shoot you. They can give you tickets. They can arrest you. They can throw you in the back of a car. But they can't give you a heart attack. That's not within their power. They don't have that magical ability to give you a heart attack. And so because of that, we will have to see what is going to happen, how it's going to play out. We are going to have to see. But he was hunted down like a dog, he was killed in the streets because racist cop, blah, 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 blah. That narrative has completely fallen apart. Let's at least be honest about that. That narrative has completely fallen apart. And maybe there's some culpability on the part of the cops that I don't quite understand. But the man had fentanyl, traces of methamphetamine, heart disease. He had a heart attack. I mean, this was not his day, man. This was not his day. And if he had not resisted arrest, and part of his resisting arrest might have had to do with the fact that his judgment was compromised by aforementioned fentanyl, which is not known for giving people clear and lucid decision-making capacities. So if he hadn't resisted arrest, because, there were two other black people in the car with him, I think a man and a woman, they didn't have their faces on the ground, they didn't have offices on their back, they didn't have heart attacks. It's like with Rodney King. With Rodney King, there were two other men in the car, two other black men in the car with Rodney King in the 90s when he was screaming through high as a kite neighborhoods, like suburban neighborhoods, before being apprehended by the cops. There were two other black men in the car with Rodney King, and they didn't get beaten up because they didn't psychotically try to resist and attack the cops.